My name is Eitan Avineri. I'm originally from Israel. I was born there, southern Israel in the desert. And when I was 7, I moved to Los Angeles with my family, and we stayed there pretty much ever since. I still live in Los Angeles. In the ska scene, my first band that I played with was the Allentons. They were together for a few years before me, but I was with them for about 4 years. And that got me kind of in the LA scene, and then I started playing with Kingston 10 with Corey Horn. I played with Chris Murray's group. I played with Joey's band, Joey Altruda's band, for a few years. And then worked with Agrolites. I've been on Agrolites recordings. So it's a tight-knit family of musicians from Los Angeles that have been making Jamaican music for a long time. Yeah.
Is Corey Kingston Horn. I'm from San Diego, California. My real name is Corey Horn, but my friends call me Corey Kingston because I've played Jamaican music for a long time. And I played in a ska band back in the day called Kingston 10. And the trombone player always would call me Corey Kingston. And so ever since then, it just stuck. And so from then on, for probably like 25 years, everybody calls me Corey Kingston, and that's my name now. So yeah, I played in a lot of different bands. I guess the most noteworthy is probably the Agrolites. I was in the original lineup of the Agrolites, and before that I was in the Rhythm Doctors, and then before that I was in Kingston 10. And then currently I play in a bunch of different bands. So I tour a lot with Hepcat. I used to play with C-Spot. And then I have my own band called Corey Kingston's Shuffle and Bang, and that's with my dad as the lead singer. And then I also play in an alternative rock band called Tigros. So a lot of different bands that I play in.
Hi, I'm Brian Wallace. I'm from Los Angeles. I play the saxophone. So the first band I recorded with was Sublime when I was in college in Long Beach. We went to school together. I played Barry sax on Date Rape from there, I went off into some other bands in the Los Angeles area. I played with Mobtown, C-Spot. I'm also a record producer. I work with Scientist as his mix assistant, and I produced records for Westbound Train, the Debonaires, and a bunch of other local LA ska groups. Many, many groups.
Well, this is my brainchild. This is an idea that I came up with on my way back from a show in Las Vegas. I was on a bus, and on my headphones I was listening to the Skylights album, Ska actually. And I was a big fan of theirs for a long time. I've been in Jamaican music, or listening to Jamaican music for a long time. And I was listening to that music, and I really thought, like, this is something that needs to happen in a big band version. So, the 7 to 8 piece ska band idea, I wanted it to be a full big band because I'm also a jazz fan. So I thought it would be really cool to hear this music in a big band format. So.
Kind of a long story, but I've known Eitan since we were kids playing in bands together. And a while back, before the band was formed, I was talking with Persephone, the singer from Ocean 11.
She's your friend?
Yeah. And she was saying, I've always wanted to do a big band, a ska big band. And I was like, oh my gosh, that sounds amazing, let's do it. And then a few days later, I was talking to Eitan, and Eitan's like, hey, I'm thinking about doing a big band, ska. I'm like, yeah, I was just talking to Persephone about that, let's do it. And so, he told me that he was going to record an album and who was involved, and I was like, yeah, I for sure want to do it. And so the first album I shared with Gil Sharon, and it was wonderful. It's been amazing. Some of the best musicians I've ever worked with.
Well, as a recording engineer and producer, Eitan came to me with the idea and said, can I use your resources to make this idea happen? And Brian Dixon and I got together and helped him produce it. So we're actually the 3 producers on the record, on both records. Yeah. What's there not to like about Jamaican music? It's feel-good music, it's cultural music. And so I've always liked Jamaican music. My family comes from the islands, or half of my family comes from Puerto Rico. And so island music, it just feels good in my heart, And so I've always liked reggae music just because of the feel. The drums feel nice, the music's laid back. Even ska music is like, when it's played correctly, it feels good.
There's a reason it's so popular.
Okay.
There's a groove to it. I originally got into Jamaican music through reggae. So when I was in 6th grade, my cousin turned me on to King Yellowman and Bob Marley. My first album was Uprising. And there's something about the rhythm that's really, it relaxes you, and it feels different than most music that I was hearing at the time. I thought it was really interesting. I was also into South African music too.
Did you say, what is that?
Yeah, it was very cool, and I was listening to it all the time.
Okay.
I started with reggae, and then I got into ska a few years later, listened to more third wave. Didn't really like that as much, but I listened to it because I like the horns. But then I heard old Bob Marley playing like Simmer Down and some of the older stuff, and then I really got into that.
Why do I like Jamaican music? Well, it's the best music in the world, in my opinion. It's the sort of creative genius behind all of modern music. If you look at even electronic music has its roots in Jamaican music. Rap has its roots in Jamaican music. Anything that's modern, that's popular, can trace its roots back to Jamaica.
When I was in college, I was 19 at the time, Mobtown, which was a big band from Los Angeles, came and played at my university, and I checked them out, and I loved their music, and I asked them, sort of, what is this, can I get involved? And that's how actually I got the gig, or the call from the Allentons. It was 2 weeks after that date. I got a call from the band leader, Tommy, from the Allentons. So it was, Mobtown was the first time I felt like, oh, I can actually make this music in Los Angeles and not just think of it as a Jamaican style.
Specifically for ska, of course, you know, you got to say the Skatalites and Lloyd Nibbs, but in my playing specifically, I get more influence from my peers. So Scott Abels is a great drummer. I think he's one of the best in our scene. Willie McNeil from Jump with Joey, and Jump with Joey is probably the band that has influenced me the most. I kind of molded my band Shuffle and Bang after Jump with Joey, and then was fortunate to work with Joey and Mike Boydo a couple times in this band, and so. But Willie just took a different approach to this music.
I'd have to say my biggest influence is actually jazz. So as a saxophone player, I really love jazz. I was in college to be a jazz player, and I was sort of married to the idea of that. But when I heard ska, we got divorced. And the rest is history. Yeah.
So again, that goes back to my family. My uncles were into ska music and into scooters, into scootering Vespas and stuff like that. So even as a kid, I was growing up listening to ska music. Even a little kid, I was listening to the English Beat and Fishbone and Selector and the Specials and all the two-tone stuff. And so that kind of, my uncles getting into it kind of influenced me to, that's just the music we listened to. And then when I was a teenager, my uncle took me to my first show. I was curious about ska music. So we went to see the Skeletones, and the rest is history, man. Yeah. I was like, I was a rude boy since that day.
In terms of Jamaican music, Skatalites for sure, and then offshoots of that, so anything by Tommy McCook, Don Drummond songs within the Skatalites. I would say that would be my biggest influence. There are other singers and stuff from that time period, but I'm less into the vocal and more into the instrumental. That's, I think, why I like the Skatalites so much. Well, this was, I met with my good friend Benny Golvin, who passed away in a car accident a few years after we started the group. And I asked him if he could put together 10 of these songs. I gave him a list of songs, the Skatalites songs, and said, do a big band version of these songs. And I held on to those for about 6 months. And then I did a recording session with Brian Wallace in Los Angeles and Hollywood. And I started talking to him a little bit more about, can we make this happen? And that's really when it started, the catalyst that started everything to actually make it a reality. So Brian Wallace was a big part of it. We got Brian Dixon involved, Corey we talked to. I had talked to actually Corey about a year before that just to see if he was sort of open to the idea. So I would say that Corey is also a founding member and a central part of the group. And then, then we talked to Joey, and then it just kind of and then we started hearing from all these people that wanted to be involved, and it just kind of all came together. And that was in late fall, early winter of 2011. And then we recorded our first album. That was the first time we got together. And then we said, we got to do a show and we got to make this happen. So that's what we did.
Well, it was actually in a parking garage at a film school I used to work at, the LA Film School. Eitan came by and he's like, I was teaching there and I met him in the parking garage and he's like, hey, I got this really dumb idea. What do you think? And I'm like, it's not a dumb idea. We could do that. And so we cut we got together and cut the first tracks and got the demos out, and Benny got together and gave us some great arrangements. Benny Goldman, one of the finest jazz arrangers. R.I.P. Benny. He, was one of the LA geniuses behind jazz. He did a bunch of stuff for the more modern big bands. Yeah. Yeah, it was a very tragic incident that we lost Benny, and we're still reeling from it. It's crazy that he's gone. Well, my mom is from Guyana, so that's in South America. And when she was growing up, they listened to calypso music. And so she had all these calypso 78s at the house. And they were like the funnest thing to listen to. So they're like scratchy recordings of people, like, if you've checked out the lyrics of calypso music, it's pretty raw. There's a lot of really awesome stuff in there. So I got into that just because it's sort of like a cartoon, kind of a expression, but what I really got into was the rhythm, and then I started studying that. Where does that come from? Again, this was back in the day where you couldn't really find any information on this stuff. This was, 80s, 90s that I was getting into this, when I was a really young kid, and when I got to college, there was a ton of ska going on because I was in Long Beach, where we had No Doubt was at the school, Oza Motley was at our school, Sublime was there, all the people and all the musicians that I was studying with were out every night playing with these different groups. And so I was playing with like Latin bands and jazz bands and trying to make money and stuff. And I fell in with Sublime first, and then Mobtown short time later, and I really liked the guys in Mobtown, so spent more time with them, and they were really serious about ska music and actually serious about creating the new version of it, but resting on the shoulders of the traditional stuff. So we were real students of that music, and still are today.
Man, I don't really worry about that. I like it. So it doesn't matter if it's popular or not. I'm still gonna listen to ska music, whether the world likes it or not. That's the music I like. So if nobody listens to ska anymore or reggae anymore in the world or in California where I'm from, who cares? I like it. So I'm always gonna listen to it, whether people like it or not.
more original songs. We're already writing for our third album, and we're shooting for all originals. So we have about half the album written and arranged, and we've already played it in some shows, some original music, and people seem to really like it and they want to hear more. So that's the plan. I think we've done 2 tribute albums for the Scottalites and other artists from Jamaica, and I think it's time for us to have our own voice and have our own music out. I would say it's more. I think every year I feel like it's becoming more and more popular. I don't think it's ever going to go away. Ska is making a resurgence. For sure, there's another big wave of interest from young, middle, and older people. And there's a lot of reggae music in the world, and I feel like there's reggae coming from Africa, there's reggae coming from Europe, there's reggae coming from Jamaica, there's reggae coming from the US, South America, Mexico, Central America. So I feel like it's a global movement at this point. It's not just one area anymore. It's I think one of the biggest gifts that Jamaica's given the world is music. Yeah.
Everything to me, so